No one's ever in there. So I go, hello, welcome, no one. See how we can figure out this camera. I don't like it on this screen because then it gets such a weird ass angle. But yeah, so if you are rewatching this in the future, which hopefully you are, because we're gonna have some good material.
Yep.
Feel free to skip ahead 5 or so minutes because I'm going to be throwing this camera back and forth, and we're going to wait for people to kind of gather their bearings and settle in. But I'll introduce myself now, and I'll probably introduce myself 4 or 5 more times because people jump in and out. But my name is Charlie. This is Terrence. I'll let him do his little introduction. But yeah, we've just been trying to run some more and more live streams just off the questions you guys ask. So I used to try to make my own kind of curriculum of what we want to cover. But of course, that only goes so far if you guys care to listen. So I'm just going to basically be restructuring these to just go off the questions I see the most in the community and emails and kind of go from there. But yeah, we're going to be going over the highest performing ad types because
money.
Exactly. Quite literally, exactly, money. And on top of that, a lot of you guys come into the Access Now program and, you say, hey, I just got started. Of course, monetization and making money is a high priority, but at this time, I really want to grow my site. So some people go for a lighter ad setup. Some people go for a heavier one. I don't want you guys to think that you can't grow your site and grow your traffic while also having, a good amount of ads on your site. That's obviously totally possible. Terrence is much better in terms of SEO, but, the most important factor here is quality content if you want to grow your site. So while focusing on ads is part of the broad spectrum, it's not the end all be all. I'll probably send that clip to one of our publishers, Jason, who kind of asked that question. Like he wasn't sure if he was going to be able to join or not, but Joanne's here. So I'm going to introduce Joanne to both of you. So Joanne, I believe she was in our WordPress mastermind group on Facebook, but she's been in here tons of times in the past. She's a frequent contributor. So hello, Joanne. Nice to see you again. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday indeed.
Excuse me if I butcher this name here, but we have, I'm just going to say Dev. That's going to be your name, Dev. But yeah, so when they ask questions, I can highlight it here. It's pretty cool to show them on the screen.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, Joanne, if you guys have anything you want us to cover, so we're going to cover probably just the highest performing ad types in terms of display ads. I mean, we can also talk about video ads.
Yeah, we can talk about ad setup in general too.
Yeah, because there's actually there's some things that I also just learned about what a good ad setup is.
Yeah.
I'm sure you saw the thread because you were in it.
There's also new features like should you use them or not.
Right. Well, do we have expand
articles?
It's for all publishers. Okay, so that's something that we haven't even covered in SPO, but that'll be something that we definitely will want to. If you're unfamiliar with it and you want to basically get a pre-exposure of what it is, it's kind of like not a paywall, but essentially how users would pay to see content on some of these bigger end media companies.
It functions like one.
It functions like one. It's definitely not a paywall. You don't have to pay, but it essentially will allow an article to go full screen. So you can basically,
Sweet. Cool.
Yeah, I don't want to go too far into it without starting, but cool. So technical influencer, hello.
Good morning.
So I know you guys have been here in the past, and we can definitely wait a little bit longer to see if some more people usually join around 9:30 or so. But if you guys have any questions at all, or if we talk too fast, or we speak gibberish, or you don't understand what we say, just ask us to slow down and go back. And again, on top of that, feel free to ask anything that comes to mind, Zoic related, of course. It doesn't have to be about ad types. It doesn't have to be about something particular where, I'm happy to cover anything. But let me well, I'm not going to show you guys yet, but I'm going to pull up a site and maybe we can just use that as a visual representation of some of the ad types we want to talk about. So I can share my screen. I will in a second.
I feel like I've seen this site before.
This is Sir Jonathan's site.
Yeah.
So yeah, this.
You don't have to share your screen.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a good page that I want to share. So this is actually a good page because it is more of evergreen content. So we do have a pretty solid ad setup here, and we do have most of the ad types we want to talk about showing. So let's go over it. Sure. I got a new computer, as you can tell.
Oh, nice. What happened to your old one?
It just kept crashing running
Yeah.
these
I
programs.
feel like I'm on my third computer at this moment.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, it was mostly running OBS, which is like what I used to record those videos, and then running all the Premiere products will poop on your computer.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Support information. I'm assuming that's what it was. WP tutorial. Support and information. Yeah, we can offer support too. I think you guys always randomly enjoy the live troubleshooting. So if you want us to do that, let's do it. But Terrence, so first off, like I say, you can give a little introduction about, I guess, what you do at Azoic. Job title, daily tasks, maybe what you did before this job title, so that way they kind of have a good idea. And then we can jump into that as well.
Yeah.
Before I let him do that, WP tutorial. So if you are an English-speaking publisher, but you still have a French site, we can actually just activate levels for you. So if that's something you want, just let us know, and we can enable that for your site. But without any more cutting off of Terrence, I'll let Terrence kind of give us a little introduction.
Hey everyone, good morning. So as Charlie mentioned, my name is Terrence. I've been working at Azoic 4 years now, almost 4 years.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
It's been a long time.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, 4 years in June. I started off as an account manager for our scaled segment, and then I have worked my way, and now I do business intelligence, where I pull data for our department, and I also do technical account manager for our VIP segment of clients. Charlie just asked me to hop on so I can help share some interesting tidbits and insights about what's in my brain. Right now, we don't talk about ad formats and what ads are most profitable, which formats you think, if you had a compromise for one or the other, which one should you actually turn on for your site? If you were just focusing on growing your site, which ads you think won't compromise that growth, we can still make money as you're growing. Because I think a good barometer of growth on a site is looking at your revenue in combination with your traffic. So you can see the earnings per 1,000 visits grow over time. Let's say your visitors change over time. You get more desktop users, more United States users. Well, then your earnings per 1,000 will grow, and you'll see your revenue grow a little bit faster than traffic in some cases. So that's why you can have a great ad setup while growing at the same time.
Yeah. I think on top of that, some people ask, we see it on Twitter, we see it on Reddit, a lot of publishers will ask, hey, should I wait to get to X size before I enable ads?
Yeah.
Or, when is a good time to enable ads? And I think it's more to consider more of what Terrence said. And you can start with a certain type of ad setup and then kind of go from there. But I don't think there's any reason why you can't be earning for the current traffic that you have while also continuing to grow that traffic. So, yeah.
You can also think about it from the user's perspective. When they hop on your site, let's say if it's from Google search, they don't know how much traffic your site has. For all they know, your site could be massive.
Mm-hmm.
And if your site looks really professional and feels really professional, they'll probably think it's massive. A good example of this was my brother-in-law sent me a site one time just over text, but something funny, right? It happened to be on Azoic. It was really cool. And I looked at the traffic on the site because I was super curious. I didn't work here. And it was like super tiny. Yeah. And I mentioned, I was like, oh, that site's, it's a little small. And he's like, really? This site looks massive. So it just goes to show that users can't really tell how big a site is. So if you think having a limited format will help your growth, well, to users, they don't really notice that. So right. I think you can definitely make profit as you're growing.
I think we'll always come back to the general consensus that the quality of content is among all the most important thing.
Correct.
If you have 10 visits in a day, but if you're really, really high quality content, that'll take you really far. of course, with a handful of other things like SEO effort and writing more content. But yeah, the quality of content is always going to be the end all be all at the end of the day. But yeah, so Terrence is obviously, extremely credible when we're having this conversation. He's also one of my best friends here.
We're best friends.
We like to get into some serious ping pong matches, which normally
Who's winning at the moment?
which are normally in my favor. But Terrence, I will admit, kudos, has been taking the last couple games.
Am I 3-0 right now against you? Last
Well, I don't know, 3-0, maybe like 10,000 to 5. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, so WP tutorial. So yeah, you don't have to share your site on here, but what you should just do is send me a quick email with your not at Gmail. Send me a quick email with your domain name, and I can get that levels dashboard enabled for you. But the levels dashboard is a great thing to have. It kind of will gamify your progress, and it'll kind of give you those things to look for in order to progress your site, both from a beginner standpoint, all the way basically up to professional, advanced, or whatever you might call it. And Joanne, we can do the same thing, or we can do what you're asking here. She says, "Hi, Charlie. Can you look at my site? Not moving well. What could I do to improve? My website is my name. Should I change the placements?" So yeah, Joanne, I know we've shared your site in the past, but just give me consent that it's all right for us to share your site, and I can share my screen, and we can kind of maybe talk about your current ad setup and what can change. That'll also go into play of what we're going to talk about here, of course. But then also before we do that, I'm going to kind of table this for a second. But you said, what should I improve? So you're trying to improve purely traffic numbers? Are you trying to improve your EPMV based off your current traffic? Just let me know what you're kind of going through there. But let's take a look at this page. I know it's been kind of loading for a second and kind of sitting here, but I want to let Terrence kind of go over, what he sees on the page, and if you're going to run your own ad setup, like what are the placeholders that we should not be missing when we set up a page?
Yeah. Can I use?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. It's cool. So the first thing to notice whenever I look at a web page is this is desktop, obviously. But for most sites, they get a lot of mobile traffic. So do keep in mind if this site, let's say, gets 25% of their users on desktop, well, then optimizing for desktop isn't going to have as much impact as optimizing for mobile. So that's always the first thing you should know. Number two, when I look at the site, I notice we have site rails here, and then we have a top of page banner and an anchor ad and first viewport. This is completely fine for desktop, pretty standard for Zoic sites currently. If I had a gauge, I would say about almost over 85% of Zoic sites would have a setup like that. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty standard. When it comes to value of ads, the most important thing you actually want to know is, think about you're the advertiser, right? And if you want that impression to be worth more, a user sees it, like I see this US bank ad, I'm more likely to go to US Bank when I open a new savings account. So they're paying per impression, right? They don't really care if I click on this or not. They just want to have this impression be the first thing the user sees, capture the user attention. So as a result, this top of page slot is worth a lot more than like this under page slot or this under in content one slot. And when it comes to the price, I would say top of page is probably at least 15% of revenue on average for most sites.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty valuable. It's pretty valuable. Then the most valuable ad slot on sites is this anchor ad actually at the bottom, because as you notice when I scroll, it stays with me. And since it's staying with me, it has a high viewability. So this viewability score is going to be like 99%, which means it's always visible to the user. And advertisers love that metric. So because of that, this is probably 30% or 25% of sites revenue on average. So it's a really high volume unit.
Yeah.
So you would see probably the biggest impact from anchor ad, then the next biggest from top of page, and then the side rails here. Whoops. The side rail left and right, these only show on desktop version of your site. So if you think about we're only talking about desktop revenue, then these guys earn on average about it'll be 10% of your desktop revenue, which is still pretty good. They do hover as the user scrolls down, but the anchor ad is definitely worth the most. And then the top of page, and then these guys.
And recently, I've actually gotten some pushback on these bottom of the page ads, but this is of course going to be a little bit more subjective, and we are from a younger generation that's a little bit more susceptible to seeing more ads, so it's a little
We're
bit
used to it, yeah.
a little more. Yeah, we're definitely a little more used to it. But that bottom of the page ad is definitely one that's not going to be hindering UX a ton. Of course, it's going to stay high viewability, but in terms of kind of engaging with the content and taking it in, it's really something that we've gotten used to. And of course, this is going to be more of a subjective manner. Most people are running it, and it's definitely, as Terrence was saying, it's super high viewability. So it's something you should absolutely consider running. Then another thing with just the side rails I wanted to add really quickly is a lot of times publishers will have content that doesn't have a fixed border or doesn't have any padding, so it will fill out all the way to the edge of the page, which is totally fine. But something to consider is if you wanted to run those side rail ads, you would have to change that in order to have a little bit of padding or a margin where you could have the side rail ads. So that's something we get pretty constantly that I see is people want to run the side rails, but they just don't want to fix the padding. You just want to make sure you do that because of course, if we ever have ads overlapping content, you're just going to leave yourself in a bad position to either get a disablement or something of that sort.
Charlie, you bring up actually an excellent point, which is when you have your web page, a lot of times, every site comes in different sizes and shapes, and publishers are very creative with how they set up their sites. However, one thing to keep a note is how your pages are set up. So, for example, in this site, I'm going to click this. If I scroll down, you'll see how the sidebar is a little bit wide here. Like it covers a lot more space, and there's not as much room on this edge banner here. And it has like a bit of space to the content. Now, I would say this is not normal. Most sites' sidebar is usually tucked in a little bit closer to the content. And as a result, it'll have space, it'll leave space for the side rail unit. Oh, that I accidentally clicked on. Let's see. Sorry, did not mean to do that. So what I mean by that is now if the side rail right would show on this side, it has a chance to cover a wider ad. Now, when that happens, it's going to lower the price of these sidebar units. So advertisers will bid a little bit less for it. So it'll actually drop the value of these a little bit. So that's why when you turn on these units, it is very important to think about how is my site set up? Are my ads going to be covering content? Are my ads going to be covering other ads? If there is any of that happening, just turn off the ad format that makes less. So in this case, I would actually recommend for this site to leave on this side rail left and then leave off the side rail right. Because I actually see, just looking at the data, sidebar top in combination with sidebar middle and then sidebar floating, those three would make you more revenue, and see how this guy floats, than having, the additional sidebar right here. So I would actually go for those sidebar sizes if there's any type of covering happening, because those are worth more valuable to advertisers and what you'll get for yourselves revenue-wise than having both on the page.
Cool. But yeah, as you guys can tell, we're kind of keeping around the circumference of the content. So one important thing to think about is that these are all things that are not kind of saturating your content, and we're still keeping the focus on the content. So viewability is high, of course, as we're saying. Above the fold is another thing to think about. But I kind of wanted to address Frank's question because I think there's a lot of different ways that we can cover this. We can talk about the capabilities of our AI and how that works, and why having the fear of too many ads per page is maybe not something you need to worry about while you're on Ezoic. So should we answer Frank? I'll just highlight really quick. Do you want to highlight?
Yeah.
Should we talk about Frank's question from? I'm gonna stop sharing my screen too just for a second. Do you want to cover this from Ezoic's AI standpoint, or do you want to talk about it in terms of content and UX?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. Is too many ads on a page? And I guess I'll answer this sort of in combination with both.
Fair, I like that.
So the first thing is we do have our system in place to optimize for that user experience, as I'm sure Charlie's mentioned in the past. And a good way to think about this is we optimize for your site's EPMV, or earnings per 1,000 visitors. Now that metric, earnings per 1,000 visitors, has visit in it, or session. And if you're optimizing for session revenue, then intrinsically your goal is to keep a user on your site for as long as possible, right? The longer they're on your page, the longer their session is, then in theory, they can see more ads over a longer period of time than a ton, at the start.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, if we think this user, will stay on the site for longer, we'll show them less ads in the initial view, or less ads in their first page view, and then so we have a chance to show them, some more ads on the second page view if it increases that probability of going to page view number 2. So that is how we're optimizing for. So as long as we increase EPMV with optimization, then that user experience is automatically included, and it's a pretty cool way to optimize for ads. And if you're worried about, let's say, platform quality reasons, we do have some back-end rules to making sure we're never showing more ads than content. It's always Google compliant. And then lastly, you do have control over the placements and how you put them on the site. However, with my sites, and I'm sure with maybe with your sites too, how we do it is I just put on a good layer of placeholders and just let the machine figure it out. Because I know some users might see a lot of ads, but I know other users will see less ads. So the system does look at signals of that user. It'll look at the time of day, the browser you're using, the and other things, other data points it can pull, and then it will use those data points to decide, okay, is this like a user that's okay to see more ads? If they see more ads, that still will lead to a second page view.
Mm-hmm.
If the answer is yes, then probably show them more. If the answer is no, they'll probably show them less in their first page view, just so they have a chance to look at that second page view, and that will ultimately mean more money for you in the end.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I read something recently that said, if let's say Terrence was working on his own site, for instance, and he added 5 to 10 more placeholders on a page because there was a lot of locations that he found were available. If Terrence were to go to view his pages more of his own pages and spend a lot of time on them, it's more likely that he himself would probably see more ads on the page due to just adding them, or is that not true?
So if you just add new placements, how it works is, like, our system doesn't know what works best yet.
Right.
So initially you could see more, as it just will show kind of the maximum amount.
It's testing. Right?
And then it'll test and it'll dial it back down.
Okay.
So usually how I recognize it, when a site first integrates, like if I integrate my site today and I put on all the placeholders today, I'm going to see more ads today than I will a week from now.
Right.
And for me, that's normal. I'm used to it. But for someone that's just coming onto it, they might not be used to that experience. They might be like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of ads right away. So give it time. Get time to marinate, and then let the system marinate and do its thing.
Let it marinate.
Yeah.
But it's true, because it's probably the first thing that you and I or any reasonable publisher would do is the second we integrate and the second we kind of change things and set up ad placements, we're probably going to be, investigating our pages pretty hypercritically. So it's just something to consider, that when you do that, it's okay to allow to give our system some time to test.
I do want to add one note about, like, when you border the line of being policy issues. So for example, if you were to add a big, like, skyscraper vertical ad at the top of your page, that would be pretty bad. It's against Google policy. It's filling the first viewport, right? The user, when they go to the site, is just an ad. There's no content or no indication of that content. So in cases like that, it obviously makes sense not to do that.
Right.
So we have set default ad sizes with our placeholders. So each placeholder you add on the page will have default ad sizes, and those sizes adhere to those policies. So just don't add like a bottom of page placeholder at the top of your page, or don't add a in content 50 at the top of the page. Top of page, under page, under page title, under first paragraph, under second paragraph, and then you should be fine in that regard. And then let's do this thing.
Yeah, and we understand that, setting up ads and kind of dialing that in to be, successful is kind of a lot. It might not seem like a lot for us, but that's also because we've looked at hundreds of sites at a time. So that's also why we kind of moved away from, do it all yourself to basically having an auto setup, because having a really good setup is extremely important in your success at Ezoic. So, I know, like Joanne, for example, joined before we even had the auto setup available. So we still have systems in place that if you didn't do the auto setup, but you'd want us to set up your ads for you, we can easily do that. excuse me, in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
So,
and if we're going to talk about, I don't know, talk about setup now or.
Yeah, we can talk about whatever.
Okay. Yeah, I was just saying like some good. My tips for setup is if I had to set up a site, how I do it is I either right now, I either use the WordPress plugin if my site's on WordPress, enable that and let it go, and then I will use our placement service. Placement service might need some spot checking on like sidebars or in certain areas. Maybe do some custom rules if the auto ad shows up in like a place you don't want it. And that usually gives my site good coverage for all pages, whether it be a short article or a long article. It just gives it a well-covered setup. And it's usually pretty automated at that point. The only work you have to really do is, if your site is a little bit custom, maybe you have, a table of contents and ad access shows in there. You got to find that box and then add a rule to exclude ads from showing inside there.
Exactly. And I think only other than that, the only limitations you might run into is the sidebar with the placement service, but the WordPress plugins will cover that. One thing you want to be aware of that if you do use the WordPress plugin, sometimes it'll add 3 to 4 to 5 sidebar placeholders. So you can either leave that depending on your sidebar layout, or you can kind of remove 1 or 2 and just run maybe sidebar top, sidebar middle, then sidebar floating. And then maybe the only other limitation I can think of is maybe dialing in your homepage setup, because it's a common practice to run less ads on a homepage.
Yeah, I actually recommend either like for one of my sites, I just have no ads on the homepage because that is like the landing page someone will look at if they go to my site and socials, or if I'm trying to showcase the site. I don't need to show them my money making side of my business. I can just show them the front door.
And taking into consideration everything we've kind of talked about in terms of viewability and those high value impressions, historically looking at the data, your users aren't spending the most amount of time on your home page. That's kind of the navigation page.
Correct.
It's where they kind of take it in. So yeah, it's not the money making side of the business. It's, hey, this is the content that I'm producing. It's super high quality. Then let's go to a landing page. And then that's kind of where they can really engage with your content, spend some more time. And that's where you'll see the value be added in terms of monetization.
But definitely take a look. There are some sites that are different and they do get a lot of traffic on their homepage. So in that case, then it's like, okay, I do need to monetize this page, because if like 15% of your users go there, or like 30% of your users hit your homepage, then yes, you need to monetize it, because that is a big chunk of, the attention that your site has and your business has. Totally. So you can totally monetize it.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit more common, maybe a use case for like a tool-based site, or like a currency conversion of a tool.
Or some calculator site.
Exactly, yeah.
But for like a regular niche blog, probably you're going to get less than 1% of your traffic to your homepage, and less than 1%, doesn't really matter if you monetize that too much.
Right. It's really not going to be the end of the world.
Are there some questions in here?
Yeah, let's start going off some of these. Okay, Charlie, you mentioned ads covering content. I recently enabled Humix. The first thing I noticed was the movable video player covering content and the other ads when I scrolled down the page. So this is probably going to be a similar answer to when Terrence was talking about the side rail ads covering sidebar content. I'm just going to make an assumption here that is the scenario in play. One thing to do is you could either, change your sidebar layout, or you could just remove the Humix video player to not only show as a floating video, but just show in mid content. I know Terrence has taken a much deeper look into, videos, especially with his site. So, I'll let you answer this.
Yeah. So first things first, I feel like, do you know how we have our anchor ad on the side when we screenshot earlier? That technically is covering content, but since it's like affixed to the screen as you scroll, it's not always covering content.
Right.
So a user can scroll to see that content eventually. So same thing with the video player when it floats out, right? It might be covering the content first, but if the user scrolls down, then it's not actually covering content. Right. I would keep note of the player size versus, as I mentioned earlier, the size of your sidebar. Let's say you have a really big sidebar. Well, then in that case, set our video player to be the smaller player, just so it's not as, in the user space in that point. But there's nothing wrong from a policy point of view from having the video player do this. You can also decide if you want this to float on mobile or not, or desktop or not. I do see some publishers disabling the float on mobile because it kind of crowds a mobile screen, right? Mobile screen is super small.
Mm-hmm.
But from a revenue standpoint, the float feature will make you more money than having a non-float feature. So that would be a revenue trade-off that you would have to be realizing you're doing. I always recommend have it on because it makes more money. And I feel like nowadays more and more sites have this floating video player starting to become a common thing. So because of that, users are sort of expecting it. I guess not every user loves it, but it's definitely another revenue stream for you as a publisher and another way to show content. Or if you want to showcase someone else's content, you can do that too. Or if you're using Humix, you're going to be showing your video on someone else's site. Well, then they're showcasing your content when they have that feature enabled too. So it's definitely a good way to diversify your revenue stream. So that's why I would turn it on.
Cool. Thank God I have Terrence here because he brought up a lot of points. I'm like, I have never even thought of that. So yeah, this is just informational for me as it is for you guys, or at least I hope it is for you guys.
Come on, Charlie, you're great too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Someone asked a good question. I want to pull up at the bottom. But Mike's in here. Mike's one of our regulars. He's from the UK. Hopefully everything with you, Mike, is great. He runs a whole site based off running or maintaining and using cast iron skillets.
Very cool.
And yeah, I've gone down a rabbit hole.
I recently learned how to season a cast iron skillet.
Will you season the skillet?
You can see. Well, seasoning your skillet is like you put oil after you clean. You put oil in it, and it's supposed to. I mean, Mike will probably. But yeah, I learned you can season your skillet.
Wow, I had no idea. Yeah. Mike, I'll be on your site later verifying Terrence's claim here.
It's true.
Most of my traffic arrives using the desktop. Great. So it's the same idea as Terrence said before. It's always good to analyze the data that is available for you so you have a good understanding of what your users are doing, but also where they're coming from, what their screen might look like, because there might be random instances where in a certain demographic, maybe you're all desktop traffic, but maybe it's only 1,000 pixels wide, for whatever reason. So, that data is available in the Zoic. So if you're like, hey, should I be enabling this massive video ad, as Terrence was saying before, or should I enable a small one? Well, maybe instead of guessing, one better thing is to do is just go into the analytics tab. You can see the framework and you can see the size of the screen, and then you can also replicate that on your own screen and see what kind of works best for you.
Just to make a note on audience, like if you have a website or anyone has a website online business, it's like you want to know your who, what, when, why, right? Mm-hmm. You want to know who's accessing your site, what they're accessing your site with, when they're accessing your site, why they're accessing your site.
Right.
And all those questions can be answered in our analytics, right? If they're all hitting your site on desktop, that's great. Now you have a key insight to focus on your desktop version of your site. But the flip side is they're all accessing your site on mobile. Okay, great. That's a key insight. Now you can optimize your mobile version of your site a little bit more than your desktop. Same thing with location of users. If all your users come from the United States, well, then you have a US audience to work with.
Right.
And you can even go as far as break down it per site or per state, sorry. Mm-hmm. So maybe you get more users from California or New York or Texas, right? Now, how would I curate my content to adhere to those users better? Right. Or maybe have an offer or a service that helps those users from those areas. So just understanding who your users are, how they're getting to your site, how they're finding your site, what they're doing on your site, and why they're coming to your site is super important when it comes to this whole monetization thing. So definitely, if you haven't spent some time to hop in our analytics to learn those things about your users.
Yeah, and you guys also, you guys used to ask all the time, what's maybe one of the most underrated or underutilized tools on a Zoic? Of course, we can give a lot of answers because we believe in those products, but the analytics for sure is going to be the one that's underutilized the most. Yeah. And I would even say, I've seen Terrence use the analytics tab.
It's my favorite tool.
And it's bit psychotic. I'm like, wow, Terrence, he was also, he also works with massive clients, VIP clients. So the amount of data that is available and that can be, analyzed to a T is there. So yeah, that's definitely, something that I even am pushing myself day after day to run more custom reporting. It's incredible. It really is incredible. And, it'll also give me this will give me another opportunity for me to talk about the Access Now program, but we don't strip any of that away from you in the Access Now program. Of course, there's differences if you're on like a Zoic Pro or not. You can maybe get some more yield reporting, but that is a small percentage of the actual data that we
it's-
offer. So
the understand your audience and like what pages they go to is way more important than the yield data.
Exactly. And we're giving you a kind of a gist of what your yield data might look like.
Okay, I still remember like when I first started working here, like a while back, and I started analytics. I was like, that's the coolest thing ever. And to this day, it's still my favorite thing here.
It's insane. You can answer a lot of your questions using analytics,
and it like so easily ties in like revenue with all the reports. So you can see like what pages they go to with how much revenue they make. You can also see like how many pages they look at on your site. So visit depth.
Right.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. Mike, if you're still in here, he's from Arkansas. Why did I think you were from the UK? But Mike,
Charlie's over here like you're from the UK.
Please don't hurt me, Mike. I apologize for that.
I'll hurt
Mike,
for you.
Can we get some clarification on the seasoning of the skillet? Since I know you're still in here, I would love to know your answer.
All right.
But Interres SEO. I think this is still the original Interres that we had before. So this is actually one of Mike Zabel's onboarding clients. I think he's with Muhammad and the PSM team now. But what's your advice on enabling infinity scroll on a news website? Does it negatively affect or impact EPMV?
You read this one?
Yeah, run it.
Yeah. So a news site would probably be the type of site, if any, I would say it's probably better to turn on with. However, infinite scroll will do a couple things you need to be aware of. Number one is each time it pulls in new content, it initiates a new page view. So your page views per visit are going to go up. So it's kind of going to inflate a little bit. So just be wary of how that's going to happen. Number two is with the Zoic, you'll need to do a little bit of custom. You need to add in some standalone code.
Right.
And basically every time that page view gets triggered, you need to have some standalone code on the site that says, hey, this is a new page view, inject ads. How that works is when you integrate with Zoic via cloud, we pull the content from your origin, like the HTML of your site, just like your web page, and then we will edit the HTML. I put in ads. Maybe we'll put in a big ad or a little ad, depending on the user, right? But we're editing things, right? And that's on server side, and then it gets delivered to the user, and the user sees on the page. However, when you use infinite scroll, it's basically all done via JavaScript on the client side. Client side just means through your browser. So a script gets called and says, hey, change my content, and it's happening on the browser. So there's no call getting hit back to your origin, so we can't, inject ads via cloud. So as a result, we need to do it via JavaScript, and we have standalone code and documentation for how to do that. If done correctly, it should improve your EPMV a little bit. However, think about this: it will lower. It might lower your session time on page a little bit. But it would increase your pages per visit. So I would say increase your EPMV like a little bit.
But you would say most likely a use case for news sites.
News sites, yeah.
Okay.
A site where like if a user is looking at content, they want to look at more content.
Right.
They want to like scroll through it.
Right.
They don't just want to see one content and bounce.
Right.
So like if you're answering a specific question on Google search, it's pretty terrible for that.
Right. Because you want to get the question.
Yeah. If they're looking for something general, like a hot news story, and then there's to see something related to it,
right,
catch their attention, and you just keep them on your site.
Right. Should we let that carry into native ads, or should we kind of? Well, it feels like UK. Oh. Let's just keep going with the question. I was just saying we can talk about native ads, but we'll can that for a second. Please, how can I do the auto setup? So, without the plugin, so you won't need the plugin because we can actually do the placement service, which is not solely required to be using WordPress. So, gratifying panorama technology. That should be in your dashboard. If you selected manual setup, you should have an option on the home page. You'll see something that says upgrade to an auto setup, or it says enable setup review, and it can go there. But if you don't see that in your dashboard, I put my email up above before, but you can honestly just feel free to send me a quick email. Or if any of you guys want to get in touch for anything, kind of quick, feel free to send me an email. But if it's not in your dashboard, gratifying person, I'll do that for you. Cool and I can set you up, and I'll send you an email, say, hey, look, I'm done. Give it a quick preview. I did X, Y, and Z, and then we can go from there. Learn with puzzles. First off, welcome back. I remember this one. In addition to the auto setup for placeholders, it's okay to add more. Yes.
Yeah.
Some of my pages are long. Also, I don't use WordPress.
That's a good question.
Great question. So, one thing we talk about often in here is the actual optimization process, or like the first couple months.
Yeah.
We have basically a standardized timeline of what that learning process would look like if you had 10,000 visits a month. Of course, being an Access Now program, most of us are not going to meet that requirement. So I think, what does it say? By the 4th or 5th month, you should be pretty dialed in if you're at the minimum of 10,000 visits a month.
Yeah.
So maybe we could standardize that for Access Now to maybe be 7 to 8 months, roughly. But the reason I say this is, and I guess kind of the whole entire reason why Zoic came about was, before Zoic, a website publisher would have, what in their head would be a really good layout of a page in terms of content and ads. And then, maybe they would have a second, maybe even a third variation of what that page layout would be. They could run that page and they can run tests for maybe days on end or maybe weeks on end. And they could compare, version 1 to version 2 to version 3. So yeah, now you have 3 variations of what your pages might look like. And then kind of go from there, gather data and see what works best. But now that a Zoic does exist, instead of having 1, 2, or 3 layouts in total, we now have, let's say, 15 different locations of where ads could show on a page, and maybe 10 different sizes for each placeholder. So now going from 1 to 2 to 3 variations, adding more placeholders and having more variables to test, we can now maybe run to 2 to 3 to even like 100,000 different variations of your pages over time. So basically, what I'm trying to say is, the more placeholders, the better, because there's going to be more variables for our AI to test. The more variables our AI has to test, the better the results will be, the better the user experience will be, and generally, the better the revenue will be due to the better engagement and experience that the user's having.
Do you have a little point to add? I don't know if you can pull up maybe the monetization scores within the levels dashboard.
Go here
or site. Screen. This is just I'm going to show you guys a really easy way to check how good your placeholder setup is. And I feel like it's probably a little underrated feature we show publishers, but I use it every day for my job.
I'm going to hide this because I've accidentally shown that page on mine before. And then I have to go through and edit.
Yeah, then go to
okay, let's share this. We love these underutilized pages.
Sweet. And then, all right, so this is just a dashboard. We're going to go to levels here. And then we are going to go to scores. So under these scores, these are basically, they were originally called monetization scores. Basically, they're stuff we created that helps with a site making more money. Now, when it comes to your ad setup, there's a couple of these I want to highlight. The first is under novice. So the first one is placeholder density. You want to make sure this guy is 100 out of 100 if you can. This one's 99 out of 100, so it's pretty close. It gets there. But this basically shows if you just have enough placeholder coverage. And going back to Charlie's point, our system decides, but this is that coverage score to just making sure, okay, are all of your pages that get the most traffic covered? So that one is the most important. Then the next important one is under intermediate. Under advanced. And is long page placeholder density. So going back to the question, I have really long pages. If this score is really low on your site, that means you have a light setup on your longer pages. And you can see that with the score here. And one way to fix this is going into our analytics, going to your top landing pages. Then you can add a column for word count, sort by the longest word count, and then pull up those articles on your site to basically find the articles that have the most words on your site, and then go in and add some additional placeholders to cover those longer gaps near the bottom of those longer pages. And that's probably one of the easiest ways and probably best way to make sure you have a good solid placeholder setup is just following these two items that pop up here under these optimization opportunities. We use it, when we advise big publishers. So it's really underutilized, and it's really helpful to making sure you have a good setup.
Beautiful. That's a great point. And yeah, that's another, reason why I love having Terrence in here, because yeah, you can just pull up your analytics, sort by word count, and then find your longest pages from there. I probably would have told you just, your longest article, go find it and add more placeholders, but that's why we have Terrence here. I'm not going to skip this question. I'm going to come back to it. But I wanted to, do you know where this feature exists, Terrence, so we can show
there's a lot
one
of
of the puzzles? Yeah.
Can I alter the size of, yeah. So does this site have Humix enabled?
I believe so, hopefully.
So if I go back to homepage and let's go Humix, and then if I go to, I believe, site, and then click on this video player tab here, this is our video player. You can add this color. And then if I go to floating player size right here, I can select the size, and also gives you a highlight of what to kind of expect. So maybe for desktop, I want small. I would click small instead of medium. Or let's say I want large. Some people just want large, I guess.
Maybe you find your users that all are using massive screens for whatever reason.
But yeah, it's under Humix, and then under the site tab, and then the video player here. And now let's change it. Also, you can change the color. So maybe you want to have the color match your site. You can find it in here.
Sweet. Thank you, Terrence. Learn Proposal says thank you. Well, now we answered it, so now I guess we can say you're welcome. Mike is definitely not from the UK. Frank says thank you. Red Frank says thank you. My name is Covenant.
Nice.
Okay, Covenant.
Nice
we
to
do
Covenant.
that. I have a few websites. And whensoever I enable Leap, it disturbs the iframe setup. I cannot display Amazon search or recommendation ads. And when I try to disable Leap, still the iframe problems continue. So this is more of a unique troubleshooting question here, which, we can troubleshoot this live if you want me to. Of course, we'll have to know what your domain is if you want to comment that and just let us know if it's okay for us to share. But, I guess we can both answer this, but if Leap was disabled and the issue exists, what I would say is clear your cache to make sure you're viewing the newest version after you disabled Leap, because if the issue persists after you clear your cache and disable Leap, maybe the issue is not actually with Leap entirely. It could be with something else, but Terrence, you want to show them?
I think there is a setting for this.
There is.
Under Leap. Mm-hmm. So if you go under Leap and you go to Optimize, and then I think it's under, it might be the lazy load iframes.
Right.
So under Leap, go under the content settings and then go under advanced settings. And then I would disable lazy load iframes and then save and activate and see if that fixes it.
Another thing you guys can do, which I think is available, is what's our parameter for excluding
site speed preview -1.
If you guys add this parameter, I'm going to send it in the comment section right now to the end of your URL. This will basically access the page.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. This will actually, it might be site speed, one word. But this will actually access the URL on the page bypassing all of Leap. So if you're having issues and you believe it's related to Leap, add this parameter to the end of the URL.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
So add this to the end of the URL, and if the issue is now gone, we can now say that the causation of that is due to Leap, and if the issue still persists, then we can say causation is elsewhere. So it'll save you time, because instead of going through and saying, all right, turn off lazy load iframes, and then maybe going through script execution and script delay, maybe you can just save your time and say, okay, let's first establish if this is Leap or not, and then kind of go from there.
I guess to just add a note on troubleshooting when caching or Leap is interfering with something on your site. I've done quite a few of these with a lot of sites. So my order of operations is first narrowed down. Is it happening with the Zoic or without a Zoic?
Mm-hmm.
So I would basically bypass our system, look at the site without a Zoic, and see if the issue is still happening. If the issue is still happening, or if the issue is not happening on the original site, but it is happening on the Zoic version site, then okay, got that narrowed down.
Right.
Then the next narrow down step I do is it leap related or caching related? And I use this extension to see if it's leap related. If it is leap related, then I know it's not caching. So then I can only focus on the leap settings.
Right.
If this doesn't fix it, then I'm like, okay, it's probably caching related. So then I'll focus my time and energy looking at our caching settings and troubleshooting that. And that's just how I narrow down things fast, and makes troubleshooting a lot easier when I do it that way. Just first narrow down if it's azoic or not azoic, then narrow down if it's caching or leap, and then within there go through the individual settings.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when we're presented with an issue, we always want to find, the exact answer to a solution, but sometimes it's best to find funnels and find the right funnel, start broad, find the right funnel, and then kind of go from there, because it's not always going to be the same exact troubleshooting process for every publisher, even if it's a similar issue. Most likely it will be similar, but it won't be the same because every single site and layout and setup is going to have something unique.
Having those broad sort of steps helps narrow down a lot of things, right? If you know it's 100% leap related, then you know not to look in all these other areas, and that saves you a lot of time. Instead of being like, oh my gosh, is this leap? Is this caching? I'll try this setting and try that setting. Let's just focus on like one product or big feature at a time. Either exclude it as a culprit, or that is part of your I don't know, like unusual suspects. It's your suspect. Yeah.
It is your suspect.
It's your suspect. Yeah. And then you do your investigation.
Premium question. We'll learn with post says super. Thank you, Charlie, regarding placeholders. Thank you, Terrence. Perfect regarding floating player size. Happy to help. J5, welcome back. I haven't seen you in a minute. But yeah, good evening to you as well. I guess I probably should have said this at the beginning, but you guys obviously know, if you've been here before, that I work in our Carlsbad office in San Diego. So we got a pretty gloomy day out right now. I don't know why.
It's like overcast.
This is gonna be really random, but I wanted to show you guys a screenshot I took yesterday on my phone.
You're gonna show a screenshot on your phone on a live stream?
Yes. Oh wait, the camera's over here. I took a screenshot.
Can anyone even see that? Oh, there you go. Actually, it sees it.
It says it's going to rain all day Saturday, 0% chance. So I took a screenshot because I have no idea what it means. It says thunderstorms all day Saturday, 0% chance. Never seen that before. But yeah, we're in San Diego. We're in our San Diego office. So it's currently 9:54. Kind of why I'm also saying that is, if you guys want to log off, if you're logging off, I've given you my email in these comment threads. So if you need something, again, just send me an email, because I'm going to be on for the next, handful of hours. So, yeah, feel free to reach out and let us know. But we're over here in the morning. I know. I don't know why I took a screenshot or why I felt inclined to share.
Oh my gosh, it's going to rain, but there's a 0% chance it's going to rain, but it's going to rain.
But it makes sense, because right now it's gloomy and it was just like drizzling, but it wasn't fully raining.
I was like, I'm wearing long sleeve pants today.
Me too. Yeah. Anyway, enough on the shenanigans.
You mean to get that question?
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, Terrence. Yeah, in terms of asking premium questions, let him rip now, because Terrence has much more experience with this.
So yeah, I have worked with the scaled segment back when I first started Zoic, so I've done plenty of premium reviews as being the rep for Zoic. So I'll give you some tips on how to get the most out of it. So when you sign up for premium and get that invite, you're eligible to book a once a quarter meeting with someone out of Zoic. I think that is probably one of the most valuable things with premium. Of course, premium gives you additional revenue.
Of course. But
having that one-on-one meeting, if you go ask a website consultant, they might charge you like $1,000 for that. Or 500 or something. We'll just give it to you for free. So definitely take advantage of it if you want premium. And what I would recommend to do is, for your first meeting, is first say, hey, are there any things you can optimize about my site setup? So first be like, let's look at my site setup. Can we optimize it? Can I improve it in any way? I would have that be your first meeting. It's only about 30 minutes long. So making sure you try to get your site set up optimized fully. Then meeting number 2, that's when I try to lead into say, hey, can you look at some of my top landing pages? Can you look at, my user analytics, and try to give me some tips on what I can do to grow my website? that's the second thing I'd use it for, is getting some advice on, what the Zoic rep thinks about some improvements you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And then number 3, always try to ask them, let me know when new features or products come out. Because let's say we just drop a new ad feature or a new site speed feature or a new niche IQ feature. I think our last one was called Page Booster. Let them know and give you a rundown of how it works, so then you can be on the game as fast as possible. That would be my tips for booking these premium meetings and trying to get the most out of it, at least from my experience when doing the meetings for publishers back in the day.
Yeah, that is definitely advice that I would take, pretty heavily. I mean, how many premium reviews do you think you've done before?
A lot.
A lot, huh?
It's like that song, a lot.
A lot.
A lot.
Shout out 21 Savage.
Yeah.
Imran's got another question. I have a few websites, and one of the latest site is not added to premium. How to add that one to premium since my portfolio has been upgraded?
It should auto be added. I do know when you add a site, there's a little checkbox that says opt into premium. And if you don't check that, it won't get opted in. But if it's not opted in, I would reach out to us to see if we either would have a button to opt it in, or if we don't, just reach out to us and we can help you.
Is that on adding the site when you add a new site?
Yeah, it's on the add a site.
Okay, so you add a domain and then check. Okay.
Do a checkbox.
And that'll go towards your current premium agreement, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then your premium plan is based off of your total account revenue.
Correct.
So if you're adding sites and building a portfolio, then it's going to make your premium plan better because there's more total account revenue. It's not just the individual site. And
a lot of guys ask something a little bit similar to that question, but you guys will say, I have a bunch of websites, I only have 1 or 2 running on the Zoic. I would love to get to level 2 or level 3 so I can get access to certain, account managers or things like that. So yeah, if you do add more domains to your Zoic account, that will, what I'm trying to say is levels is actually on a publisher level, not on a singular domain level. So if you have 10 websites that all do decent traffic, those will basically be summed up into a larger level. So a lot of you guys that, you guys ask that question a ton. Your level is going to be based off all of your domains, not just one or not just your biggest domain, for example. What are the requirements to get a Zoic's premium invite? I don't think we have exactly solid standardized requirements per se.
I think the main thing we look at is just, will the site work in the premium program? Mm-hmm. Like, will, the traffic growth, for example, if we see a site that, traffic's super volatile, they have a huge spike and then completely falls off, huge spike and completely falls off, it probably won't work in premium, so you won't get an invite. But if it's consistent growth, you'll get one eventually. We just basically have checks to see, will the site make sense for premium? No set criteria.
And then, how do I set up responsive ads? Because it shows 0, 100 level in my level dashboard. I've answered this a handful of times, but Terrence, I'm just gonna let you take it over again because I don't know. I don't think I know the best way to take advantage of setting up a responsive ad. I know I can show you guys how to do it, of course, but in terms of actually doing it and providing,
You want to see how I would do it?
Yeah, let's run how you do it first. You want to share the screen?
Yeah.
So we'll show you how to set this up first, and then maybe Terrence can elaborate a bit more on, maybe why you would actually do this.
Sweet. All right, so we're on desktop here, and this is just an article. So we'll go ahead and turn on the Chrome extension. Give it a refresh. But basically, responsive ad sizes is a way to add larger sizes for larger screen sizes. That's a mouthful.
Right. It's the right idea. Yeah. And could the same be said for smaller, or is it only for larger screens?
Oh man, this is great. So for example, let's take a look at this sidebar unit here. So this maximum width is 280 pixels, right? Now what I could do is I could add a wider ad size. Let's say I wanted to add like this 400 width ad size. I can enable it. And then under here, I would set a min screen size rule. Let's say I want this to only show on screen sizes bigger than 1981 pixels. 1980 is a common size, so I don't want it to show on that size, but I want to show on the next biggest size.
Smart, okay.
So that's why I do 1981 here. 2000 is another one. So basically, if you have extra space on your screen that's not being utilized, So the extra space will show if you're on a big screen size compared to a small screen size. That is when responsive sizes comes in. So if I show this, what size is this monitor? Do you know?
I have no clue.
Okay, well, it probably won't show for us. But now for the larger screen size, this ad size will now show, but it won't show for any screen size smaller than that.
Right.
So if I zoom in, is it Command?
Yeah, Command plus.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I have a Windows, not a Mac. So I'm zooming in, right? The screen size gets smaller. But if I zoom out, the screen size gets smaller, right? So maybe for one user, this is what that site will look like. So now you have all this extra space. So then you can put in a wider ad size, maybe in the sidebar or in other parts of your website, and it will only show when a user's on that big screen size. I recommend just go into your analytics, see the largest screen size a user goes on, change your screen size to that, and then see what ad will fit there, and then enable that ad size with that min screen size rule, and then there you go. It's a very small optimization, so don't think you're going to be making like a ton more. It's a tiny optimization, but every little optimization counts. In some cases, it could be like a 1 to 2% uplift.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be small. In some cases, it could be more than that, depending on the ad size and where your users are coming from. But every little thing can help, especially if you're trying to super fine tune your setup.
Right. And this definitely goes back to who, what, where, when, who is your traffic, what screen sizes are they using? Will this, is this worth my effort? Do I even see visitors above X size on my screen? But yeah, I guess you can sum it up saying, responsive ads are ads that fill based off the response of how big a screen is or is not.
Yep.
And that's basically how you would set it up. The better you set that up, that's how you would see that level score go up as well. Let's get to these last ones before we wrap this up.
Yeah.
I don't remember if I checked. Maybe I missed. Oh, so this is the premium question. So yeah, if you're not sure if you did or not, the best thing you could do is just to reach out to one of us. Again, my email's in here. Find us on the new support page. If you guys have not visited the new support page, I would suggest doing that. Is that it?
Yeah, I think so.
Let me just show you guys what it looks like.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, that's right.
This one?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this is what our new support page looks like. So we're running a live webinar, but this actually hasn't been added yet. We need to add it because I run these through StreamYard, so you guys can use social media to view them. So those aren't even in there yet. Type the email. We have our knowledge-based articles, webinar library of previous videos, the latest and greatest. We also have some blogs. This has actually been a really cool feature. Have you used this really much yet?
Is that new?
Yeah, so this is actually brand new. So basically what you can do is, we can find, for instance, the site we're looking at, and let's say you just integrate, but you're seeing, an error message of like a compatibility issue. This can actually start to somewhat troubleshoot this, but it'll flag any technology conflicts you also have. So one that we see pretty often is like Jetpack. If we recognize you're using like Jetpack on your site, we can say, hey, this is a technology conflict because, it blocks a lot of our analytics from ever being generated. So yeah, this is kind of another cool tool. But as you guys know, and Terrence said before, if you're in a premium review, ask for any updates of things that we come out with, because, Terrence and I both work here, and things have been mentioned to that.
I didn't know we have a new troubleshooting feature. That's pretty cool.
We have a massive list of really talented engineers and developers that are kind of readily available to work on whatever. So things like this can be kind of produced and given out to you guys rather quickly.
Yeah, I think this page came out like this week too.
Yeah, no, I think like 2 days ago. Joanne, I'm going to answer your question because it's about this. I have rank math on my system, and my Zoic Analytics says to remove it. So I actually saw rank math was also being flagged on another site recently. I'm not 100% sure what the confliction actually will be with, but if everything is working, your sitemap is up, you're not seeing any cache conflictions, you're not seeing any page load issues, no origin errors or anything like that, then it's totally okay to just leave it on. But if you were to notice certain issues, maybe your first avenue that you might check is your conflicting plugins. but yeah, it's hard to say that there's a universal conflict for every website with a certain technology, but that's just not always the case. There's so many different variables to consider, like host and.
I would just want to chime in for a little bit.
Please.
I have ranked math on one of my sites, and it does show up as Leap as yellow, but I leave on the site because I have 95s for my core vitals.
Right.
So clearly for me, I want the value that plugin is providing, and I'm passing my core vitals.
Right.
So I see it not as an issue for speed, so I leave it on the site.
Right. So I guess it's being flagged for speed.
Yeah.
Then.
So my advice too, also, if you're looking at the Leap recommendations, is focus more on the red ones or the teal ones first. See which ones you can fix or remove before you go into those yellow ones. The yellow ones aren't that big of a deal, but let's say you're teetering on the line for one core web vital and you're like, oh, this plugin is definitely getting in the way of that, then you can make that decision. However, I do know Rank Math's an SEO plugin like Yoast, so it's super useful for your content. And if you're already passing your core vitals, then definitely leave it on your site.
Beautiful. And so, Joanne, it sounds like in your instance, maybe it's best for you to leave this enabled on your site. We can talk about Outbrain ads. Terrence, you want to talk? I love the insight. So yeah, I mean, if you're running Outbrain ads alongside a Zoic, if you're seeing revenue drop in a Zoic, that's probably because, well, it is, first off, actually, it's not against policy, is it?
No.
Yeah, but I'll let you tackle it.
So first of all, I would say, based off this question, enabling Outbrain ads shouldn't lower your other site's revenue. If that is happening, it's probably not related, just from hundreds of sites I've seen in the past. And Outbrain ads, at least if you're using it through our system, is you would enable it in the dashboard and then you go and add a placeholder. So you would add a location for the native ads. And if that location, let's say, is top of page, well, then in that case, it might take away the revenue from that top of page unit, which is really high. I think we mentioned earlier is 15% of site revenue. And if native ads, how they work is, or Outbrain ads, is if a user clicks on it, you make money. If a user doesn't click, you make no money. So if no user is clicking on it on your native ads, but you were making money before from users not clicking on your top page ad because it's paid per impression, then yeah, you could lower your revenue that way.
Right.
But that's only like a severe case. You're putting your native ad at the top of the page. You're basically telling, users to focus on this rather than the ad that's paid per impression. So bring down the value of that one. However, generally, if you add native ads, let's say at the bottom of your page, in your sidebar, you're not going to have an issue with that conflicting. I would recommend to keep an eye on the analytics. Just see how much revenue it's bringing in. On some sites, native work well, and some sites it's not so well. So just see how it's performing. It can be anywhere from like a 1% uplift to, I've seen some sites have 30% uplift. It varies per site. Usually those like new sites are like super clickbaity, it works a lot better with, but it might not work as better on like a blog site.
Covenant says, asked before, but just so you won't forget, is it possible for a Zoic to use my AdSense codes to show ads without wrapping? Because I didn't use the plugin or extension option, yet ads are showing. So I guess I'll answer this from an Access Now standpoint. If you were to come through and use our auto setup, 100% of your traffic would be going through a Zoic, which would mean that all your AdSense ads would need to be wrapped. We actually now auto configure that unwrapped AdSense ads will automatically be wrapped. So you actually shouldn't have a scenario where AdSense ads are showing alongside of Zoic ads on an Zoic version of your site. But this is probably something that I'll just want to look at after. So Covenant, if you could actually just send me a quick email and make sure that I have whatever you're asking dialed in. I just want to make sure that I'm not running into any issues, because if there is a scenario where you have an ad, an Zoic version of your page with the Zoic ad showing, and you have AdSense ads that's not being recognized by our ad tester, we could be very much so throwing off the user experience, because we're saying, our AI might be saying, hey, this is what the page looks like. This is what the visitor is coming from. Let's display X amount of ads because that's what the data shows. But in reality, if there's AdSense ads showing on top of that, we now might be really saturating your content and providing a really poor user experience. So it's actually not in your favor to be showing AdSense ads unwrapped on your Zoic versions of your pages. It'll actually only work against you.
Yep. There's a follow-up question to the Outbrain. Here.
On that one, yeah, you can click on it.
If a user clicks on my ads, will it increase my EPMV? Generally, the answer is yes. However, do you know that a lot of the ad demand we run through is from Google Ad Exchange? And those ads are paid per impression. So advertisers will basically buy impressions, and an impression all is based off of an ad shows or doesn't show, right?
Right.
And that's how they use it in their ROI calculations. So yes, clicks will increase EPMV if advertisers see historically that, hey, you're getting more clicks on these ads, then they'll increase their CPM rates because they know it's higher value. Conversely, if you were working with AdSense only, then that would be only click-based bidding. So that means you're super reliant on clicks.
Mm-hmm.
But with, a Google Ad Exchange setup that we run through and just historically what we've seen in the market, it's way better to have mainly impression-based bidding. That will pay you more in the long run. Click-based bidding is better in some cases, but in some cases, not a lot of cases.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. All right. Last, we'll answer. Well, I would say. Okay, so I can it's hard to answer this question because you're saying, my EPMV is very low. It's 2 cents and my traffic is from the USA. There's so many things we want to look at here when we're actually analyzing this, but this is definitely something, this is just an incorrect setup. If you have a proper setup and high quality, tier 1 traffic, a 2 cent EPMV is never going to be realistic. Yeah. So Silva, what I would highly suggest you doing is actually just, reaching out to my email right now. And as you guys know, I have a handful of hours left in my workday. So, I can set aside a little bit of time to just see what's going on here. And I'll just I'm sure it'll be a pretty easy, straightforward answer when I look into this.
Just to add a little point on like EPMV. So when it comes to EPMV, there are probably 100 factors that, 100 factors that involve with it. And, as Kumna just said, does content increase my EPMV too? Yeah, that's true. Content type matters, right? If you have your content that's about, the best credit cards to sign up for, you're going to have higher EPMV compared to sites that have, top fruit trees or something, right? Right? Because it's just a higher dollar product, and usually higher dollar products are related to higher ad rates. So content type matters. As another user said, traffic from the United States. Well, yes, United States is high value. So if you have US traffic, that will be a factor too compared to other countries. It's historically been true. So we got two things now, content and United States. Right. Well, let's start going through the list of some other things, right? If you have all your users go to mobile only and not desktop, well, hey guys, mobile is a lot smaller of a screen size, right? It's only this big compared to why a desktop screen is much larger. So there's more ad space or real estate for advertisers to buy. Right. So guess what? You're going to get higher ad rates on desktop compared to mobile, right? So we'll keep going down the list, right? Browsers, right? There's actually different ad rates between browsers, right? If all of your users came to your site on Google Chrome, you would make more money compared to all of your users came to your site on Safari. The reason for that is Safari has a lot more privacy restrictions in place, so there's less data that can be passed on to the advertiser to bid on.
Interesting.
Chrome has a lot of proprietary data that they can use, like browser history, etc., that they can pass on the advertiser, which means higher ad rates.
Right.
Another fun fact, the highest earnings browser is actually Microsoft Edge. Your users from Microsoft Edge will make you more money than users from any other browser. The worst performing browsers are like Opera GX and Brave browser, basically the browsers that have ad blockers built in.
The highest, right.
Yeah. So we've only covered like 4 things so far, but there are hundreds of factors that get into it. So this is why whenever people say, I have an EPMV problem, and it's, EPMV is low and that list one factor, that to us isn't, a lot of information to go off of. We really need to see the domain. We need to see a lot of other factors. So when, you email Charlie later, he's going to be digging into our analytics and see, okay, where are users from US, but what type of content do you have on your site? Where are users coming from on browsers? Are they coming on what devices? What about the traffic sources? Are they coming from Google search, coming from Facebook, coming from direct, coming from email newsletters? All of these things are super important to basically understand how much a site makes. And there are many other factors too. Ad setup is probably one of the most important, right? If you have one ad on your site, you'll be making a lot less compared to if you have 10 ads on your site.
Right.
Exactly. So that's just my little spiel on how ePMV is so much different on site per site. So that means if you have a site that is all US traffic about golfing and another site is all US traffic about golfing, they won't have the same rates because of everything else. What if one gets mainly desktop traffic and one gets mainly mobile traffic?
Right.
You'll have different rates.
And that was super, super, valuable information. Obviously, hopefully some of that was new to you guys, new to me. Some of that was new to me as well. But that's why it's also kind of hard to answer your question. So, but 90 to 140 visits, but when you look at 99 other factors to see why exactly EPMV might be 2 cents.
Yeah. Or it could be like a technical issue with like ads.txt.
Exactly. You might, maybe your ads.txt is returning a 404. So, users or advertisers can't actually bid on your inventory.
Correct.
So there's just a lot of things that we can look into, and I'll be happy to do that. And yes, Joanne, I'm sorry about that. That'll be my first thing I do right after this. I know you said I could share it earlier, but I'll be happy to go through right after this, and I'll send you an email and I'll send you a quick report. I have all your email and everything. Please. They said, thanks a lot. This has been so insightful. No, I agree. This has definitely been one of my more favorable, live streams I've done. And I think a lot of people will rewatch this. I think that's where I get most of my audience is when people rewatch it. So I think there's, I would highly encourage you guys to rewatch this later on because there's been a lot that's been said. Maybe you didn't listen to the whole hour, 15 minutes or whatever. Yeah. But Joanne, absolutely, I'll be doing that. Will a Zoic published dashboard ever be an iOS or Android app? Good question. It's been a topic of conversation for a pretty long time. Hopefully soon. You can use the dashboard on a mobile device. Is it perfect? Is it ideal? No. Can it be done? Is it?
I use it on my phone.
So. I can use it too. You can absolutely use it.
I show off my Zoic earnings.
Terrence goes and shows off his earnings too.
Look how good the website. And they're like,
Terrence, look at Humix earnings. Yeah.
Your website's making how much off AI videos?
Yeah. We love our AI videos over here. And you guys will see why pretty soon. So yeah, I think we've kind of answered everything. I know Terrence has a lot to do today, so I don't want to hold on to him forever. How soon should you put ads on a site? We actually answered that kind of earlier on, but yeah, as soon as possible would be our thing. And I guess I'll just give you a quick answer, Emmanuel. Focus on content above everything else.
Yeah.
Quality content will take you to a successful.
But you can definitely put on ads right away.
Yeah. Focus on high quality content always. That'll always be one of our highest forms of advice for sure.
But it's also kind of nice to see if you produce content and then you make some money off it. It's like a motivator to keep going.
Totally. Yeah.
So that's why I say even if it's a small amount, like I have a tiny site that's about apples and I don't make much, but hey, sometimes when an article does well and I'm making some money off it, it feels good.
Right. Totally. So yeah, Terrence, there is an ongoing joke in the office. Terrence is the Apple guy because he is an Apple site, not Apple technology. We literally mean the fruit apples, not the technology.
It's the best fruit in the world.
We'll can that for another conversation because we know that's not the truth.
Yeah, it is.
But again, I wanted to say first off, thank you guys so much for joining. Happy Friday to you guys who made it to the end of the week. I hope you guys have some time this weekend to both work on your site, but not work on your site. Get outside and just chill and hang out, spend time with family, friends, yourself, wherever it might be. I definitely want to say a massive thank you to Terrence for joining and offering a lot of great insight. It seems like you guys definitely took a lot of valuable information from this, as did I, to be honest. So yeah, I want to say thank you guys so much.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks for having me again.
When will the next live stream be? Next week. If you want to cover something, hey, I want to talk about something random. You want to talk about specifically AI generated videos? We will definitely be happy to talk about that, or whatever it is you guys want to talk about. We'll be happy to, because I'm not here to push any type of propaganda. I'm just trying to answer your guys' questions. So one of the questions I got over and over and over was, highest performing ad types. So that's what I'm going to talk about. So if you guys want to talk about AI, whatever, or video, whatever, just let me know. We can kind of put a plan together and talk about it. But again, thank you guys so much. I really, really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day.
See you guys. Thanks for hopping on.
Cheers.